What Gary does is not only does he share a little bit of the science behind it, but he shares 7 personal assertions that he uses to step into this self-talk and take control over it. You are not defined by what's inside your head. You are what you do, your actions. That's a quote from today's book from Gary John Bishop, Unf Yourself. Yes, we're diving into all things self-sabotage. And here's the truth, self-sabotage sucks, but it's going to still come up from time to time. So why not have an actual tactical plan to get over it? That's what we're going to be doing today in today's book breakdown. If you're ready to do that with me and end self-sabotage for good, let's go. So welcome to Modern Leadership, where we help busy parents become modern leaders so they can excel both personally and professionally without burning themselves out. We do that via short, quick tip videos on Mondays and Thursdays and longer workshops on the weekends. If you're new, consider subscribing, but let's get right into ending self-sabotage. So today we're going to take a really quick deep dive into this book, which is a powerful book on really controlling your self-talk. The things that you say to yourself in your brain that get you off track, that get you not to take action, and the thing that is truly holding us all back. Now, after this video, if you want to grab a copy of the book, I'll leave you the link inside of the show notes, but this might be one of those books that you read over and over and over again, just like I did. So let's dive into chapter number 1. So chapter number 1 is In the Beginning. Gary writes, studies show that we have over 50,000 thoughts per day. Think of all the things you say to yourself that you'd rather not, or that you try to overcome or defeat. While we have little or no to say in those automatic and reactionary thoughts, we have a massive say in which of those thoughts we attach significance to. They don't come pre-loaded. So in the first chapter, he talks a lot about how our minds are programmed, and a lot of the times that pre-programming can set us up for negative self-talk. The reason why this is so important is because he says there's a difference between success and failure. If human emotions largely result from thinking, then one may appreciably control one's feelings by controlling one's thoughts, or by changing the internalized sentences or self-talk with which one largely created the feeling in the first place. You see, the power of self-talk will either get us to take the actions that we want to take, or get us to feel like maybe we're not good enough to take the actions. And before we know it, we've actually talked ourselves out of doing the things we absolutely need to do. And that is why this book was created. What Gary does is not only does he share a little bit of the science behind it, but he shares 7 personal assertions that he uses to step into this self-talk and take control over it. Now, still in the first chapter, he talks about the difference between assertive and narrative language. This is critical for you moving forward. He says one of the mistakes we make is when we talk about what we are going to do or what we will do. Don't even get me started on should or try. Subconsciously, we are already determining when that will be happening, and it's certainly not in this moment of time. So when we start to use those words, believe it or not, we shut the door for our potential for the future. We're basically going to box ourselves in to get us not to take action. That is why he's broken this down into 7 different personal assertions. The first one, I am willing. He says, you have the life that you're willing to put up with. Whether or not you like it, this is the life that you have chosen. The first step in anything is really taking ownership of where you are. When it comes down to it, you have to determine what you're willing to accept and what you are unwilling to accept so that you can put your stake in the ground. I think what's powerful about this book is not only in the assertions, but it's in the statements of I am. That is a version of assertive language, basically stating what you are right now, this moment. Not some fairy tale land or time in the future. You're putting the stake in the ground right now. He says, once you frame the obstacles in your life as a matter of willing and unwilling, what you're willing to accept and what you're unwilling to accept, instead of weighing yourself down with negative opinions of yourself and your circumstances, you can break through these self-imposed barriers that are truly holding you back. You can see through the distractions of self-talk and drama. So you have to ask yourself, am I willing? Chapter number 2 is, I'm wired to win. The truth is, you are winning at the life you have. What if I told you, even when you think you're losing in life, you're actually winning? That everything that happens is really a victory. This one actually reminds me back to life coaching, because sometimes when we get ourselves not to take action, we are winning because we're getting comfortable. Our brain wants us to stay there, right? So even though we might not see it in that perspective, our brain is actually winning in that situation because it's saving us from being potentially humiliated, from being judged, from being shamed. But it also prevents us from going into the future and creating something else entirely new, making an impact, being hope for others. And we can't do those things if we're unwilling to be uncomfortable. That's why he uses this personal assertion, I am wired to win, because you are wired to win, but you have to take control of the wheel. Personal assertion number 4, I got this. He says, everyone has their problems and life isn't always perfect. It never will be. Now, when he says, I got this, it doesn't mean you have to have a perfect solution. It just means you have to have your hands on the wheel. You have a say in this, just like you've had a say all along. It's not always pretty. It's not always fun, but you've got this. We're not saying this to paper over cracks or to make you feel a little better for a split second. Look at your track record. You really have got this. You'll make it work just like you always have. You had it then, and you got it now. Get in touch with who you really are and say it. I've got this. Chapter number 5, I embrace the uncertainty. Uncertainty is where new things happen. He talks about being an addict for certainty. We want to know things for sure before we take those actions. But here's the thing, we could never know if things are going to happen or not until we actually take action. He says certainty. We seek the certain and avoid the uncertain. We want to know what to expect, where to go, and what to wear. We want to be prepared. We want to be safe. It's far beyond a want, though. It's more like an addiction. We're sizing people up before we even know them, predicting their character in seconds. We buy goods and brand names that we're used to, even though there are plenty of alternatives. We take supplements and vitamins to prevent an illness we don't have yet, date people for months, sometimes years, to make sure of our future, to make sure that it turns out in a way that we can predict. Give me that certainty, certainty, certainty. But here's the paradigm of potential. First, uncertainty is where things happen. Uncertainty is your personal pathway to opportunity. It's the environment in which you grow, experience new things, and produce new, unprecedented results. Uncertainty is where new happens. When you stick to what you're comfortable with, doing the same things you've always done, you're effectively living in the past, and you're not moving forward. Success is never certain. It never comes without risk. Even if you're the smartest or the hardest working, there's no guarantee of anything. One of the big things that I know holds me back a lot of times is the judgment or thought of what other people are going to think. That's why he hits this up in the end of this chapter. If you want to win, you have to be willing to be judged by others. The truth is, guys, when it comes to being judged by others, you're going to be judged by others, whether you do something or not. I mean, think about this. Aren't you also judging other people, regardless of how they show up? So if it's going to happen anyway, why don't we just lean into doing things that we're uncertain about because we know that's where the power truly is. Chapter number 6, probably my favorite of all. I am not my thoughts. I am what I do. You are not defined by what's inside your head. You are what you do. Your actions. Being a life coach, this is an extremely powerful chapter for me because it is so true, especially when we don't understand how thoughts work. When they start to pop up in our head, we think that they have full control over us because actually they do. It's not until we realize that we can have one thought but do something else entirely different, and it will literally change what we're actually going out there to create. He says it's not like successful people never doubt themselves or never have a desire to procrastinate or avoid a particular situation. It's not that they always feel like doing what they should. They simply lean in and do it anyway. I could spend all day on that chapter, but let me move on to chapter 7. I am relentless. I love the way that he describes being relentless. He says at this point, when you don't know whether you're up or down, how far you have to go or how far you've come, there's only one thing that can keep you going. That thing is relentlessness. It's the momentum to keep moving and moving and moving no matter what happens. It doesn't matter if we're feeling it. It doesn't matter if we're gripped by doubt or worry. Here's the deal. True relentlessness comes when the only thing that you have left is relentlessness. When it seems like all is lost and all hope and evidence for success have long since vanished, relentlessness is the fuel that drives you through. I always like to think about times in my past that I've actually been relentless. Because sometimes in certain situations, my brain will pop up again and try to convince me that I'm not. But I can always go back and find every single one of these assertions and when they've been true in my life. What's crazy is when you focus on those things, you will actually create more of that in the future. But if you focus on your self-talk, the things that are holding you back, the things that convince you that you're not good enough, that you're not going to be able to succeed, you will actually manifest that as well. So if you're going to spend time focusing on something, I would decide to choose these personal assertions over your self-talk. Final chapter, what's next? It's this simple. In order to improve your internal world, you have to start by taking action in the external world. Get out of your mind and get into your life. So these are the 7 personal assertions. I am willing. I am wired to win. I got this. I embrace the uncertainty. I am not my thoughts. I am what I do. I am relentless. Now that you've had a chance to preview the book, you might be wondering how you can develop the consistency of avoiding that negative self-talk. Don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this other book review from James Clear speaking about atomic habits. That's definitely the next place to dive in. Let's create a habit around not focusing on our self-talk. Be sure and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this, and keep leading from the front, leaders.